Hello. Thank you very much for your speech. I guess I should just introduce myself.
You should introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Afua Hirsch. I am the Social Affairs Editor at Sky News. I'm a former barrister and legal correspondent at The Guardian, among other things, and a keen follower of events in the legal profession. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here today, not least because it was an excuse to escape the Westminster newsroom.
Is there something else going on?
As I'm sure you can imagine, is not a place anyone would want to be right now, except if you like watching strange soap operas in real time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me. It really is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your speech, and it would be remiss if I didn't start by asking you to probe you a bit deeper about Brexit, because none of us can escape it. Well, I can't escape it, and I'm not going to let anyone else.
Where do you want to start?
It was very interesting the way that you talked about the fundamentals of the legal profession remaining intact, but you also referenced the fact that you do have members who are deeply concerned about their future,
yes,
both their employment or the firms that they work in. What message do you have for them, and what will you do with your presidency to support them in practical terms?
Well, we are already, have been working hard, Catherine and others, since the decision to ensure two elements, really, drawing the profession together. So we've been talking to people, and we have other sessions taking place next week, draw together those who we see as most obviously affected within the firms that have that international global reach, and also the in-house teams within the corporations that are, again, likely to be affected, so the financial services sector, some elements of manufacturing, to see how they are seeing the land lie. And we've heard that people are drawing up plans A, B, C, and D, and there are other people in the room who I know are busily employed, and again, I thank them for coming along, providing that advice. Noting a reluctance at the moment, for people to actually make decisions that may be precipitate. So I think where we're getting to at this time is, and of course one recognises that there are people within the profession and probably within the room who are very pleased with the outcome of the referendum. So you don't take a particular view on it. We are, I think, as a nation getting to the point where we stop wondering about things. We recognise that actually, following, I suppose, the comments made by, but actually she's on the same journey, the Prime Minister, it's a reality. We'll make the best of it. So we want to connect with our members, see what's going on, and see what we can do. But the fundamental, as I said in my speech, is to maintain the status of our jurisdiction and English-Welsh law as governing law under contract. And the common law remains that flexible vehicle that you can use to support commercial and other transactions. So it's that messaging. It's be confident, keep in touch, we'll see what we can do.
Does it feel as though you have the opportunity to shape the outcome for the profession in that context? Obviously, events that are to such a great extent out of all of our hands. How much influence and control can you as a profession take within that?
Well, I think we can actually. We've got, that real connection with clients. So all those people who are working it out and having to make decisions in a commercial environment, including commercial environment includes the business of law, and also the expertise, the technical bits. So what's happening in terms of competition and intellectual property, what happens in terms of the Establishment Directive and so on. So that we can say, and again, Catherine's been in touch with the EU unit that's been set up, although we'll now got a department for Brexit or whatever it is, with a different minister in charge of it, to say, look, we have the expertise within the profession. Let's draw it together. Let's see what the fundamentals that need to be in place. And again, that's part of the purpose of talking to the profession. And one of the things you see with something like the Law Society at this time is that it is a useful conduit. We don't pretend to have, we have a huge amount of expertise within the building, in the policy teams and so on and so forth. We have Michael in the Brussels office. So we've got a whole range. We've got the international team who are picking up signals from offices of UK-based or headquarters firms elsewhere in other parts of the world. It's all feeding it back together and being a conduit back in. What do we actually need to do in circumstances where we are told that the purpose of freeing ourselves from Europe is to be out there in the world competing? We're already out there as a profession competing. We have been for years, actually. And that's why I say we should be in the vanguard. We're it. And in touch. So yes, we can help shape it.
Speaking just about small firms in particular, I don't remember a time when there weren't apocalyptic predictions about the fate of small firms. Are they facing a particular set of challenges now? And do you feel as pessimistic as some other people about their future?
Short answer, no. I recognise no business, no firm, no solicitor will be successful unless they focus entirely and continually on their clients, whoever their clients, their chosen clients are. If you are a small firm, again, it covers a host, doesn't it, of the niche, the technically excellent to, or expert, to the excellent broader range, general practitioner, focusing perhaps on private client or smaller businesses. I travel the country, it's been my privilege, and it's one of the things with this role, you get that opportunity to stick your nose into other people's business, and sometimes you have responsibility for doing it as well. But you meet people in those circumstances who have a very, very clear idea who their clients are, what their clients want and value. They provide that to them, and in many respects, actually, in some areas, you don't have to tender for work. My firm spends hours, my managing partner, senior partner, other people in the room, hours, days tendering for. It's very costly. Actually, if you've got a relationship with that element of client, you can do well, but it's about providing value always within the terms defined by your client, whether it's an individual or not. I accept within that, firms of any size can be hit by something which is almost catastrophic in terms of alterations to a regime, in terms of cost thresholds or whatever it might be, that really disrupt the business model and the financial model, and sometimes scare the bank as well. And in those circumstances, you've got a real problem. The issue, I think, for smaller firms is always going to be the issue of succession. Who's going to take this practice from me to enable me to retire in an orderly circumstance when I want to retire? And that's something I think that we as a society need to keep, what the term is, messaging, communicating to people.
And speaking of messaging, I mean, there are so many changes, and you mentioned so many of them, changes in regulation, for example, with the SRA's new handbook. It's difficult for people outside the profession to keep up with the changes, although ironically, so many are designed to increase access for clients. Do you think that these are positive developments in terms of increasing access, and what are your specific concerns about how it will affect firms?
I think the issue that we have, and I've spent quite a lot of time because we anticipated the consultation would have been released before PERDA, before whatever it was, so out again around the country, and you say general public, actually practitioners, when you're doing their day job, what is the nature of regulation? What is the nature of independence? I stressed it a few times, and I think there's a real issue around potential confusion. And what we've got, I think, on the background of that consultation process is a change in the definition of regulation. We were brought up, some of us, given my age and all the rest of it, to understand that regulation was about professional conduct and professional conduct rules. It seems to me, if you look at the way in which regulatory objectives, so improving access through really improving competition, then actually what you've got is regulation which is market manipulation. And there's nothing wrong with that. We've got governments that intervene more or less to establish markets. Where we are at the moment, and one of the things I was trying to do is say, fine, wait for the consultation, let's see what it amounts to. But when you're reading it, think very carefully about how you define and how the authors of the document define regulation. Because if we're talking about market regulation, that is different from professional standards, in my view. And if we're talking about a regulator that wants to be a licensor of a market, that's fine. But again, that may be different from professional regulation. I think the risk is, where we are at the moment actually, there's a significant degree of confusion. We know that we have a significant number of people providing legal services who are not regulated or qualified. And the irony, and again, Catherine's been explaining this again to any number of people, as have I and others, that we've got the most qualified and the most regulated, and then you've got a whole raft of people who are probably providing legal services to people who are not sophisticated purchasers of legal services, and I think will be confused and may not understand the level of protection or not that they have. So, you know, those are the issues in play. But I'm certainly not against a review of regulation. I think that if you're looking at market regulation and that's what you accept, then it will lead you to a level of what is appropriate in those circumstances. But again, it's different, maybe different from professional standards and professional regulation. And I think we have perhaps common cause with the bar at that one.
In short, things haven't become less confusing
not yet.
since my time. Let's
Not
talk
yet.
about diversity, because you made a very passionate plea
Yeah.
to continue a focus on diversity
Yeah.
in your speech. Where does your commitment to ensuring diversity in the legal profession come from?
I was trying to work that out. I was talking to someone earlier, actually, about the level of activity and the enthusiasm and the concern. And I can't, I think, really remember a particular moment, a light bulb moment. I think it's just something that I've always been conscious of. We live in a hugely diverse society. It is, I think, a real force for good. It's fantastic. You get so many different perspectives and views. And we should be promoting that. And in circumstances where, as I say, I think some of the comments that have been made by some people have been pretty disgraceful long term, we ought to be protecting it as well. So how do you do that? You celebrate it, and you look at things that are interfering with it, getting in the way of it, and you try and free those up. So when I first became involved in the Law Society, I did actually apply for a role on the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I think it's just incredibly important.
And there's diversity in so many forms,
Yes.
of course, but there's also social diversity.
Yes.
And another relentless focus
Yep.
recently has been social mobility
Yep.
and the need to ensure that in the legal profession. Do you feel pleased with the progress that's been made so far?
I'm pleased sounds self-satisfied, so no. I'm encouraged by, again, I see and I hear people talking about it. There's the Prime Initiative that's been running for some years, started out of Allen & Overy, but there are initiatives all over the country. I have concerns about things, again, that just tend to interfere with that. So I think some recruitment processes we need to look at, and I think that is an area where we ought to be making some progress. I think there are also issues within the way in which the legal market operates. So some of the things around lateral hires, for example, I think interfere with some aspects of diversity. So there's a lot of work still to do, but I'm absolutely sure that the profession as a whole is determined that something should be done. It's about actually ensuring that we don't let ourselves off too easy on that one.
Are you willing to stake your legacy to some extent on your ability to try and improve things?
Yeah, absolutely, and most of it is pretty measurable. I mean, we had something last week in relation to, again, the Law Society, and I won't say it's unsung hero, but we support the Citizens Foundation in relation to public legal education and work in schools, and have been devoting money to that over a long period of time. And we see within that context that we've got information that undergraduate population in relation to BME is about 36–38% of the undergraduate population. However, the entrance into the profession is running about 26%. What's happening there? And what should we be doing about that? So yes, I'd love to commit to that. I am committed to it.
Good.
I'd like to make a difference.
Commitments. So much more I could ask you, but I'm conscious that we did promise we would open up to questions. So we have a few minutes for questions from the audience as well. And whilst you're just thinking about your questions, and if people have questions, they can raise their hands so that I can get a sense of how many we need to get through. I've got some Twitter questions as well. And this one is from Becky. What do you think the future looks like for those entering the profession now or thinking of becoming a solicitor?
Change. I think that's my interest in what I call line of sight. I think we have 160,000 members in the profession. I want us to pay attention to those who are coming into the profession, so the student population, those who may or may not acquire LPC, those who are working as paralegals in law firms and other businesses.
It's especially uncertain time for them, isn't it? Because
But there are opportunities. So do they want to work in-house? Do they want to participate in the management of their businesses? Do they want to think about a career in the judiciary? And if they do, then they should get themselves in a place, acquiring experience. at early days. So there's an opportunity for us as a society to knit things together, to, as I say, give that line of sight to people, because we are in a very, very, very uncertain time and very changeable time. And the way in which people define, and we've heard a number of commentators on the profession and what is truly going to be regarded as technical work and what is susceptible to some other way of delivery, it does throw up all sorts of issues. I always say to the admission ceremony, we have, again, they're fantastic, whole variety of practice, but before, and particularly, obviously, therefore, people entering the profession, before you've invested too much in the status quo, the traditional path, think about the skills that you have, your interest, the skills that will be needed to make a successful legal service provider, and set about acquiring them. So that you can. I really, really have a concern that too many of our profession are allowing themselves or being pushed into a position of being regarded as increasingly overpaid gophers. And I think there's a whole range of skills and expertise that you can put on top of, build around a legal qualification to put you in a very good position as an individual to develop a very good career. But you can't sit still. You've got to develop, and we should be helping people with that.
Great. I'd like to take some questions from the audience, so if you could just raise your hand, anyone who has a question, and...
I'm waiting for my managing partner to rewrite history.
So a lady here, yeah, the lady furthest forward, yes.
Hello.
No, I'll come to you next.
Hi, my name's Michelle Edwards. I was wondering, given what you've just said, what you think about the new apprenticeship entry to solicitors, whether you think this will improve or lower the tone?
Great question. Thank you.
I'm interested in the apprenticeship route. People talk about, don't they, the 5-year route. I think there is a separate question as to whether or not people should be encouraged into the profession as graduates. And again, I think you look at a number of other professions, some of them what we regard as newer professions, where graduate entry is the route. But I know, and my firm offered apprenticeship at a level, and the first recruits into that were people who were perfectly capable of winning a place at university, who had A-levels at maths and chemistry, very good grades, A's, and they had chosen the apprenticeship route, partly because, asking them why, the uncertainties around the future for the solicitor career path. So I think it is something that we should not dismiss out of hand. I don't accept that of itself it must necessarily lead to a reduction in quality, and I do think that it can be part of the diversity, social mobility route. So I don't dismiss it, and I don't assume it reduces quality.
Thank you very much. The lady at the back, yes.
Yes.
Have you got a microphone?
Yes, I have. Thank you very much. My name is Catherine Alexander Theododou. I have a small firm, an ethnic minority firm. I heard before you speaking about the protection of the small firms with the Brexit. What is the protection of the small firms with the Brexit, the small ethnic minority firms, which now are in the foreground of various attacks? Because I haven't heard from a president any mention of the small ethnic minority firms. Secondly, what is the protection of the small ethnic minority firms from the regulator, as we do have the largest number of attacks from the regulator? So I haven't heard anybody speaking in protection of the black and ethnic minority firms. Secondly, what happens to the small black and ethnic minority firms who are bilateral, like me? I'm also an advocate abroad. What is the code of practice for us? Because there isn't any. So is the president going to look into it by visiting these problems? Because up to now, nobody has done so.
Thank you. I think that's three questions in one. So let's try and take them. So Brexit, regulators, and code of practice.
And the position in relation to small firms in all those contexts, particularly BME firms, which are disproportionately represented in that group. We are, I mean, I have been a member of the Regulatory Process Committee. We are very concerned with the circumstances, the criteria, the transparency of the decisions to intervene or not necessarily intervene, but pursue disciplinary action against small firms, particularly those BME firms. And there is not a continuous dialogue, but there is discussion and gathering information. Actually, as a council member, I have received, one always receives, a notice of a referral to the SDT. They are a letter that is entirely standard form, but I have taken steps to visit some of those about whom those letters have been written, to gather information about the circumstances. And I have to say I do have a concern over the criteria and the proportionality or otherwise of the actions that are taken, and I am concerned about that. So we will and do pursue that in the context of our work with the SRA, and also we have a dialogue with the SDT in relation to both those. So far as, I didn't quite get the question in relation to Brexit and the small firms.
I think the question was, you mentioned that there are small firms who feel under threat by
Yes.
Brexit, but BME firms feel kind of doubly
Yep.
hit because they feel persecuted by the tone of Brexit, and then on top of that, the changes that have been. I think that's fair. Is that a fair reflection of your question?
Sorry,
I think, yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've spoken about we must not tolerate intolerance. And certainly it is disturbing that the rhetoric, and one hears about it frequently, and again, we do have a role in saying it is not acceptable. Have you heard from members who have felt attacked or intimidated or threatened? I haven't personally. I have heard of other anecdotes, not necessarily associated with members, where that has been the case. So yes, I am very concerned about it. We must celebrate and work to protect that.
And I think the final part of the question was about, is there a specific code of conduct for foreign practitioners?
Well, there are rules in relation to recognised foreign lawyers. Well, and we must. Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. Right. Well, we're looking. Yeah, we are very concerned about that aspect of Brexit and how it might bear, and we are undertaking work on that. That's one of the things we're taking up with the EU unit, or now Brexit department. So it's fundamental that we should seek to preserve that.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we're out of time, actually.
Are we?
Yes, it's gone so quickly. So thank you very much for answering those questions. We had some great on-the-record commitments from you there, which as a journalist I'm always thrilled to get.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being a great audience. So around.
Thank you.